The alien council was tense. Their world had long been at war with humanity, and peace seemed impossible. The queen, tall and proud, stood before the council chambers, listening to arguments. They spoke of treaties, of strategy, of survival. But one idea made her pause: marriage. She was to wed a human, not for love, not for friendship, but for peace. When she first heard the name of the human, she felt a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. His reputation had spread across systems. They called him clever, calm, and unusually brave. Still, how could an ordinary human, frail compared to their warriors, be enough to save a galaxy from endless war? The queen arrived on Earth for the meeting. She watched humans go about their lives, simple and ordinary, yet strangely confident. She saw him waiting calmly, dressed simply, his posture straight but relaxed. He bowed politely, eyes bright and attentive. She felt a small surprise. He carried a presence she did not expect. There was no fear, no arrogance, just a quiet confidence. The ceremony was simple. In her world, weddings were grand displays of power, showing armies and fleets. Here it was only them standing under the sky. Words were exchanged, promises made. She promised to protect him. He promised to stand by her. The council members from both sides observed silently, waiting for any sign of weakness. After the ceremony, she walked with him through the streets of his city. She noticed small habits: the way he smiled at children, the way he helped a stranger pick up dropped papers, the patience he had with everything around him. These were small things, but they showed strength she had never considered. Strength that was not measured in battles or weapons. Later they returned to her world together. The alien citizens watched curiously. Humans were rare here, and many doubted his worth. The queen felt their doubts as tension in the air. She too had doubts at first. But she had begun to notice something unusual. He was calm where others would panic, thoughtful where others rushed, and respectful even among enemies. The first test came quickly. Scouts reported a small raid at a border planet. Normally this would require a full army to respond. The queen looked to him. He nodded and suggested a plan. It was simple yet clever. Instead of sending soldiers to fight, they used small machines and shields to block the attackers. The humans and aliens worked together. The attackers were stopped without major conflict. Watching him, the queen felt awe. His mind was sharp, his decisions quick but precise. He could see moves that others missed. When the aliens saw the result, they whispered among themselves. Some still doubted, but many began to feel hope. Perhaps this human was more than just a symbol of peace. Perhaps he was a key to survival. That night, the queen and the humans spoke quietly in her private chamber. She asked, "Why do you not fear them? They are stronger, faster, and have weapons far beyond ours." He smiled softly. "Fear does not help anyone," he said. "We must think, plan, and act. Strength comes in many forms." She was struck by the simplicity of his words. Yet she realized their truth. In the following days, she watched him meet alien leaders. He spoke with respect, but also with clarity. He listened more than he spoke. He found solutions that had been overlooked for decades. Slowly, tension began to ease. Battles that seemed inevitable were delayed. Peace, however fragile, felt possible. Still, she knew this was only the beginning. Marrying for peace was only the first step. The galaxy was unpredictable and challenges would come. But she also knew that having him by her side made her feel stronger, braver, and more certain than ever before. As they walked together through the palace gardens, she glanced at him. He laughed lightly at a small joke about alien etiquette. She found herself smiling despite the weight of their duties. This human, who was supposed to be just a symbol, was already changing the world. And in that quiet moment, she realized something important. She had married a human for peace, but she had discovered someone extraordinary. Someone who might not fight like a normal warrior, but who could change the galaxy in ways no one else could. The sun set over the palace. The air was calm, but beneath it, a new era was quietly beginning. She had no idea what the future would bring. But for the first time she felt hope, not just for peace but for a partner who could stand beside her through anything. The queen watched as the humans stood on the observation deck of her flagship. The stars stretched endlessly before them, shining bright and cold. Scouts had reported trouble on a nearby planet, a small skirmish between alien factions that could spark a larger war. The council had debated sending a fleet of warriors, but the human raised his hand. "We can do this differently," he said calmly. The queen turned to him, curious. "Differently? How?" she asked. She had seen humans fight before, but always in small numbers. She did not expect much. He pointed to a holographic map of the planet. "See here," he said. "They are predictable. Their movements follow patterns. If we set up barriers and use sensors to guide our troops, we can stop them without heavy conflict. She raised an eyebrow. Without fighting? Yes. Fighting should always be the last choice, he said. His voice was quiet but firm. The Queen felt a strange sense of confidence listening to him. The fleet moved into position. The human walked among the alien soldiers, showing them where to place shields and how to deploy small machines that blocked enemy paths. At first, the soldiers were skeptical. They were trained to attack, not to stop without striking. Yet he spoke clearly and they followed. The enemy arrived, expecting chaos and blood. Instead, they found barriers in their path, sensors tracking their movements, and soldiers standing calmly, ready to defend without striking. Confused and frustrated, the attackers retreated. The Queen watched from the deck. She had seen many battles, many warriors with strength and fire. Yet none had commanded the battlefield with such control. None had turned a fight into a solution without chaos. She felt awe growing inside her. After the skirmish, the Queen and the human walked through the aftermath. Soldiers cleaned equipment and repaired machines. The aliens who had doubted him before now looked at him with new respect. He is not like us, one whispered. But he is stronger in ways we cannot see. The Queen nodded silently. Strength, she realized, was not always measured in muscles or weapons. Sometimes, it was in the mind, in calm thinking, and in guiding others wisely. The human noticed the Queen watching him and smiled. "Do you think I will always be this clever?" he asked. She laughed softly. "I do not know if it is cleverness or luck. But I do know that you are different from anyone I have ever met." He shrugged. "Perhaps. Or perhaps humans just see things in a simple way." Days passed and more small challenges arose. Traders refused to follow agreements. Minor fleets tested the boundaries of treaties. Each time, the human found ways to solve problems without unnecessary fighting. He used diplomacy, clever devices, and teamwork. The Queen began to notice a pattern. Wherever he went, chaos calmed. Wherever he acted, people began to cooperate. Even those who disliked humans could not ignore his effect. One evening, the Queen sat with him in the council hall. Alien leaders had gathered, arguing loudly over a disputed trade route. Normally, she would have spoken or sent warriors to enforce her will. Instead, she let the human speak. He listened carefully, asking questions and pointing out solutions that no one else had considered. Slowly, voices lowered, arguments softened, and a plan was made that everyone could accept. The Queen felt a new kind of respect. This human did not fight with weapons. He fought with thought, with logic, and with trust. And somehow it worked. That night she thought about the future. She had married him for peace, yes, but she had not expected this. She had not expected him to be so calm under pressure, so clever in every choice he made. She felt a quiet hope. Perhaps this human could truly change the galaxy. The next morning, scouts brought word of a larger threat, a fleet moving into the sector with hostile intent. The council panicked, suggesting full-scale battle. The human smiled. "Let us see if we can avoid it first," he said. The Queen followed him as he devised a plan. Once again it was simple but brilliant. Using decoy signals and quick maneuvers, he guided the fleet away from populated systems. No ships were destroyed. No lives were lost. And yet the threat was ended. The Queen's eyes widened. She had seen heroes before but never like this. A human, physically weaker than most alien warriors, controlling the battlefield with calm precision, winning without bloodshed. That evening they walked through the palace gardens. The stars shone above, quiet and endless. "Do you think they will ever believe humans are strong?" the Queen asked. He looked up at the sky. "They already are starting to believe," he said. "Strength comes in many forms and sometimes, the smallest force can have the largest effect." She nodded, thinking of everything she had seen. The human beside her was no ordinary man. He was clever, brave, and unshakably calm. And she knew that this was only the beginning. As they stood together, the wind brushing past them, the Queen realized something important. She had married a human for peace, but she had discovered someone who could protect, inspire, and lead in ways no one expected. A force not measured in strength alone, but in courage, intelligence, and heart. And in that moment, the galaxy felt a little safer, not because of armies or weapons, but because of a human who had begun to show what humanity could truly achieve. The Queen watched as the human walked across the command deck. Reports had come in from several systems. Minor attacks were happening almost everywhere, and the galaxy seemed closer to chaos than ever. Yet, he remained calm, moving among the alien officers with quiet authority. He spoke to each one with respect, but his words carried weight. They listened. The human studied the maps of the star systems. He pointed out the enemy fleets, their movements, and their weak points. The Queen noticed something remarkable. While most leaders relied on brute force, he relied on knowledge, timing, and careful planning. Even the most experienced alien generals seemed to defer to him. A signal came in from a nearby system. A hostile fleet was advancing quickly, larger than anything the Council had faced before. Panic began to ripple through the officers. The Queen could feel it, but the human did not flinch. He calmly examined the reports and made a plan. "Divide their attention," he said simply. "Use their expectations against them. We will not attack directly. We will guide them where we want, and they will fall into their own mistakes." The officers looked confused. This was not a normal strategy. But when he explained each step clearly, they understood. Slowly they began to follow his orders. The fleet moved into position. Alien warships followed his directions exactly. Sensors tracked every movement, and small unmanned ships acted as decoys. The enemy fleet charged forward, expecting a fight. Instead, they found themselves caught in traps they could not understand. The Queen watched in awe. She had seen humans before, but none like this. He was not physically stronger than the enemy, but he was faster in thought, sharper in strategy, and calm in a way that made others feel strong. Hours passed. The enemy fleet tried to change course, tried to fight, but every move was anticipated. Slowly the attackers began to retreat. No ships were destroyed, no lives were lost, yet victory belonged to the human side. The Council whispered among themselves. They had never seen such control. The Queen walked to the command deck beside him. "How did you do this?" she asked. He smiled lightly. "By thinking, not by fighting. By understanding, not by destroying. Strength is not only in weapons." She nodded. She had thought humans were fragile, slow, weak compared to her people. She was wrong. This human was a war god, not because he killed or destroyed, but because he commanded, led, and inspired. News of the humans' victory spread quickly. Other alien leaders began to take notice. Some were skeptical, but many were impressed. He was no longer just a symbol of peace. He was a force to be reckoned with. Over the next days, more challenges appeared. Pirates, rival fleets, and rebels tested the borders. Each time, the human found clever solutions. He coordinated defenses, created traps, and used technology in ways that no one had imagined. The Queen followed his actions closely, learning from him and admiring him more each day. One evening, as they watched the stars together, she asked quietly, "Do you ever tire of this?" He shook his head. "No. It is not tiring when you see people working together. It is exciting when you find solutions that save lives." The Queen realized that this was why he was different. Most leaders sought glory, power, or fame. He sought understanding, safety, and cooperation. Yet his actions inspired awe. Soldiers, officers, and even aliens who did not like humans began to respect him. A week later, a council of alien leaders arrived to observe the humans' methods. They expected to see a weak human overwhelmed by superior forces. Instead, they watched as he directed fleets, anticipated movements, and created strategies that seemed almost impossible. One general whispered, "He is a god of war, but not like any god we know. He fights without violence, yet he is undefeatable." The Queen smiled softly. She had known humans could be clever, but she had never imagined one could change a battle without lifting a weapon in anger. That night, in her private chamber, she spoke to him. "You have shown them strength, and yet you do not strike. How do you do it?" He answered simply, "Strength is more than force. It is patience, planning, and care. People follow those they trust, not those who scare them." The Queen reflected on this. She had married him for peace, but she was learning that he was more than a peacemaker. He was a leader, a protector, and a war god in ways her people had never seen. The next morning, reports came of other systems hearing about his victories. Traders, fleets, and alien councils began to respect humans more. The Queen noticed a shift in attitude across the galaxy. Fear and doubt were slowly turning into admiration. As she walked beside him in the palace gardens, she realized something important. The human had revealed the true potential of humanity. Not brute strength, not weapons, but courage, intelligence, and calm leadership. And she understood fully that marrying him was not only a step toward peace, it was the beginning of a new era. A human could rise, lead, and inspire like no other being in the galaxy. As the sun rose over the horizon, she looked at him and smiled. The galaxy would soon know the power of a human who fought like a war god, not through blood but through mind, heart, and courage. The Queen watched as the human moved among alien leaders gathered in the Grand Council Hall. They were tense, still suspicious of humans and hesitant to follow his advice. Trade disputes, border disagreements, and centuries of mistrust had built walls between the races. Most expected arguments, maybe even small fights. Instead, the human approached each leader calmly, listening carefully. He asked questions that made the aliens think. Why do you want this planet? What is your real concern? Can we find a way that does not harm anyone? His words were simple, but they carried weight. The leaders could not ignore him. Slowly, voices began to soften. Arguments that had raged for decades started to quiet. The queen watched silently, amazed. She had married him for peace, but she was beginning to see that he was more than a symbol. His mind worked like a weapon of diplomacy, cutting through suspicion and anger. His presence alone made people reconsider their choices. One alien counselor, proud and stubborn, raised a complaint about human trade policies. The human did not interrupt or argue. Instead, he asked questions, highlighted mutual benefits, and offered alternatives that no one had considered. The counselor, frustrated at first, eventually nodded in agreement. The hall erupted in quiet murmurs of surprise. After the meeting, the queen spoke to him privately. How do you do it? How do you make them listen without force? He smiled lightly. Strength is not always about power. It is about understanding, patience, and respect. People follow those they trust. Trust comes when they see fairness, calm, and wisdom. She reflected on his words. In her world, strength had always been measured by skill in battle, power of fleets, or the size of armies. Here, she realized strength could also be measured by intelligence, patience, and the ability to unite people. Over the next few days, they traveled to several contested planets together. Each time, humans and aliens worked side by side, guided by the humans' calm leadership. Disputes that had seemed impossible to solve were resolved through careful planning, compromise, and creative solutions. At one border system, two alien factions were preparing for conflict over a resource-rich planet. The humans studied the situation, consulted maps and data, and then invited leaders from both sides to meet. He proposed a shared agreement where each faction could benefit equally without taking more than they needed. The leaders were shocked. They had expected a fight, not a solution. But the humans' plan was clear, fair, and practical. After hours of discussion, they agreed. The queen observed silently, noting how the humans' calm demeanor inspired trust even among her people. In another system, traders who had refused to work with humans now accepted cooperation. They had seen how the humans solved problems without conflict. Even those who had doubted him began to respect humans as capable, clever, and fair. The queen began to feel a new kind of pride. She had married him to bring peace, but now she understood that he was building something greater. He was changing how humans were seen across the galaxy, showing that courage, intelligence, and empathy could be as powerful as any weapon. At night, they would walk together under the stars. The human spoke quietly about his goals. I do not want to rule with fear or force, he said. I want to show that humans can lead, protect, and inspire. That strength comes in many forms, not only through war. The queen listened, admiring his wisdom. She had known him as clever, calm, and brave, but now she saw him as something more. A leader who could unite not just planets but entire civilizations. One morning, news arrived that a hostile fleet had been planning attacks across several systems. The council was ready to launch full-scale war. The human, however, proposed a different approach. He sent envoys, used clever communications, and arranged meetings to show the enemy that aggression would lead to nothing but loss. By the end of the week, the fleet had withdrawn. No ships were destroyed, no lives were lost. The queen watched in quiet wonder. This human had prevented war through intelligence, strategy, and diplomacy, and the galaxy had begun to see humans as capable allies rather than weak adversaries. Slowly, across systems and planets, the queen noticed changes. Alien leaders who had doubted humans now asked for advice. Traders cooperated more freely. Ordinary citizens began to see humans with curiosity instead of fear. It was not through weapons, fleets, or battles that he had achieved this. It was through guidance, calmness, and clever action. As they walked together through the palace gardens, the queen looked at him. You are more than I ever imagined, she said. I married you for peace, but you are showing strength far beyond what anyone expected. He smiled softly. Peace is stronger than war when it is real. Leadership is strongest when it inspires trust and hope. That is what I want to show. The queen nodded, understanding fully. She had married a human for peace, yes, but she had found a true force of change. A human who could lead, protect, and inspire without ever raising a weapon unnecessarily. And as the stars glimmered above, she realized something important. The galaxy would soon remember this human not just as a husband, but as a symbol of strength, courage, and wisdom. A true war god, not of destruction but of hope and unity. The galaxy was changing slowly but surely. The queen walked alongside the human in the corridors of her palace, listening as ambassadors and leaders spoke of him with respect. The human who had once been seen as ordinary was now regarded as a force of wisdom and courage. He had shown that strength could come not from brute power, but from intelligence, leadership, and compassion. Reports came from distant systems. Former enemies were now allies. Trade routes that had been dangerous were open and safe. Alien fleets patrolled borders not out of fear, but out of mutual trust. The queen realized that this was his true power. He had united the galaxy not with war, but with guidance and inspiration. She remembered the first day she had met him, doubtful and unsure. He had seemed so ordinary then. And yet, in only a short time, he had proven himself extraordinary. She had married him for peace, but he had created something far greater. He had created hope. One morning, the council summoned them to address a gathering of leaders from across the galaxy. The human stepped forward, calm and confident, and spoke with clarity. He thanked the leaders for their cooperation, reminded them of the victories they had achieved together, and spoke of the potential for even greater peace and unity. The aliens listened, some nodding, some whispering to one another. They could feel his sincerity, his calm confidence, and his understanding of every perspective. He did not speak to command them but to guide them. And guidance, the queen realized, could be more powerful than any order shouted across a battlefield. After the meeting, ambassadors approached him, asking advice on trade, defense, and diplomacy. Even those who had once doubted humans now sought his counsel. The queen watched silently, amazed at how effortlessly he inspired trust and loyalty. At night, she walked with him in the palace gardens. The stars shone above, a quiet reminder of the galaxy's vastness. "Do you ever worry about the future?" she asked. He shook his head. "The future is never certain. But people can change it if they work together. That is what I hope to teach everywhere I can." She smiled softly. "You have done more than I ever imagined. The galaxy will remember you not for battles, but for leadership and courage." In the following weeks, systems far from the palace reported fewer conflicts. Leaders who had once been hostile now worked together to solve shared problems. Citizens spoke of humans with respect and curiosity rather than fear. Slowly, a new era was taking shape, one of cooperation, understanding, and mutual respect. The queen reflected on the meaning of it all. She had married him to secure peace, to protect her people from endless war. But what he had created was more than peace. He had built a legacy that would inspire generations to come. One afternoon, as they watched a fleet of ships move together in perfect formation, she said quietly, "I thought I knew what strength was. I was wrong." He turned to her. "Strength is more than muscle or weapons. It is courage, intelligence, patience, and understanding. People follow those who inspire them, not those who terrify them." The queen nodded. She thought of the countless moments when he had guided armies without fighting, had resolved conflicts without bloodshed, had earned loyalty without fear. She realized that this human had changed the way her people, and the galaxy, would see humanity forever. Later, the queen and the human visited a planet where former enemies were working together to build schools, trade routes, and communities. Children played freely in the streets, aliens and humans side by side. The queen watched quietly, feeling a warmth in her heart. This was the future he had envisioned. The human knelt beside a group of children, showing them a small model of a spaceship and explaining how it worked. They laughed and asked questions, excited and curious. The queen realized that in this simple moment he was teaching more than technology. He was teaching hope, trust, and cooperation. She looked at him and felt deep respect and admiration. He had proven that humans, though smaller and physically weaker than many alien species, could lead, inspire, and protect. He had fought like a war god, not with violence but with courage, intelligence, and heart. As the sun set over the planet, the queen spoke softly. "You have done more than anyone could have imagined. You have built a legacy that will last for generations." He smiled, quiet and humble. "I only hope it is enough to show that strength is not only in war. It is in understanding, cooperation, and the courage to guide others wisely." The queen nodded. She had married a human for peace, but she had discovered a true force of the galaxy. A human who had become a war god not through destruction, but through leadership, inspiration, and hope. And as the stars shone above, she realized something profound. The galaxy would never forget him. Humanity had finally shown its true power, Not through fear, not through weapons, but through courage, wisdom, and the ability to bring beings together. And in that moment, she knew with certainty that this human would be remembered forever, not just as her husband, but as a legend who had changed the galaxy without ever striking a blow that was unnecessary.